It's one of the reasons why I'm in this area and why I'm fascinated by this area is to do with the history of the McQuillan clan, and actually Glenarm is the heartland of the McDonnells, who ousted the McQuillans from their land around the north coast. Ballycastle especially, and so Glenarm and Glenarm Castle is actually the seat of the McDonnell family and has been since the 1500s, 1600s, and still the McDonnell family live in Glenarm Castle. And actually this whole site here, these pods, are run by Glenarm Castle. So there's a McQuillan staying in McDonnell territory. So we've been doing a lot of research and looking and finding articles that have been written about the McQuillans, and it's fascinating. One of my previous trips up to Glens, where there'd been a battle of Ora at Slievenora, where it was kind of the final ousting of the McQuillans. But I didn't realise, actually, I thought Charles McQuillan, where there's a grave there in Glens Valley, I thought he was the chief, the big chief, and that was the end of the McQuillans altogether. But actually there were others. Edward was the father, and there was Rory Og, who I think was actually he was called Roderick, but known as Rory Og. So it seems like a lot of them died at that battle, which I think sort of seemed to start in around Bonamargy Friary and then sort of spread back in the Glens Valley and the Slievenora. Just absolutely fascinating. And it seems it was an attempt by the McQuillans to reclaim the land that McDonnells had taken from them, and had then joined an alliance with the O'Neills. But tactically the McDonnells kicked their butts and did all very bravehearty, like it's all very much like very braveheart kind of stuff. The McDonnells seemed to be actually more lightly armed, almost more guerrilla tactics. Had laid down straw to cross a bog, and then drew in the McQuillans and the O'Neills, who were more heavily armed. I think they were Gaelic glass as well, and Gaelic glass actually had quite heavy armour, and so they would have gone into this bog, lured into this bog, and they just with horses and heavy armour and got sunk in the bog, and were just basically picked out and slaughtered at Slievenora. And it seemed like there were two other clans that had been in an alliance with the McQuillans, had turned up late to the battle, had seen that the McQuillans were struggling, and instead of coming to their aid, Sorty Boy McDonnell had gone to them and asked them to join them, and that was decisive. Just absolutely mind-blowing. And there's still a lot of ambiguity about the McQuillans. You know, there are McQuillans in Wexford who apparently have, documents that connect them to Niall of the Nine Hostages. And this is the McQuillans who are like royalty in the ILYA, Ulster clans. There was different dynasties in the ILYA. McQuillans are one of them, known as Lords of the Root, and were potentially sort of kings of Dalriada, which is a kingdom that spans across from the north coast across to Scotland, Dunsebrick to Dunad. But then there's also this idea of the McQuillans being this introduced kind of aliens, and I've kind of leant towards that as well. And more recently, the possibility that they arrived with Edward de Bruce as a mercenary force, and that appear at that point, so 1315. But who knows? And it seems I've read an article where they're saying it's kind of propaganda against the McQuillans to discredit them and take away any claim that they have to the land. but at times of war, the propaganda at war sometimes gets written into the narrative and then into the historical narrative. Who knows? It's a mystery, and I love it. I'm just fascinated by it. What the plan is, whether it happens or not, my plan is to walk the Antrim Hills way from Glenarm up over Black Hill, Robin Young Hill, along Salabraes, which is beautiful, and then across the Agnews Hill. I've never been on top of Agnews Hill, but my plan is to camp on top of it. So do a summit camp on top of Agnews Hill. Agnews Hill used to be named after Rory Og McQuillan. So this is going to be my attempt to reclaim Agnews Hill as McQuillan Mountain. We'll see. That's the plan. We'll see. And I kind of wish they had like a wee flag or something I could like stick down with the McQuillan crest on it. But I did try. I had a wee look, but I couldn't get anything sorted. But I think a summit camp will do okay. That'll be like me reclaiming it. Repossessing the land. But we'll see how the day pans out. Get these noodles into me. These noodles are actually great. Nama noodles. They actually came with 2 different wee sachets, different spices and all. And you could like adjust how spicy you wanted it. They're actually super tasty. Did not expect that from noodles I found in a wee random convenience store. So on top of that, it seems like King James I felt sorry for the McQuillans for losing their lands, and had granted, and this is where Galgorm Castle comes into the picture as well, that King James I had granted lands at Galgorm to the McQuillans, but I think it was to Rory Og Jr., Rory Og II, because I think his father had died in battle at Slievenora. From what I can tell, I'm still figuring this all out. But Rory Og II wasn't as battle hardened as the rest of his clan seemed to be, and ended up being tricked out of his land by somebody else, who I think then built the castle. I don't think it was the McQuillans built that castle. I think they had the land for 10, 20 years. Yeah, and it was said like it seemed like the McQuillans were very much a warrior family. I would have said they're a Gaelic kind of family, mercenary army family, and that lends itself to the Edward de Bruce thing. But if there were, kings or whatever off Dalriada, then there would have been McQuillans here and in Scotland. So it could have been, there was no sort of separation. It's not like they only existed in Scotland and then came over here. They could well have been in Ireland and Scotland, and there's a group of the McQuillans have come over with Edward de Bruce in that capacity. But yeah, it was said of the McQuillans, and none of them died in their beds. They all died in battle or murdered. But yeah, it is all very brave, hardy. A little bit Game of Thronesy, but probably more brave, hardy. Yeah, I think I'm going to have my noodles, pack my bags, and go down to Glenarm Castle, to the seat of McDonnells, and I will not bend the knee before I go and reclaim Agnews Hill as McQuillan Mountain. And also the McQuillans maintained the old clan chief system, whereas the McDonnells took on the title, the English title of Earl. So it was the Earls of Antrim. So Randall MacDonald, and actually the 15th Earl of Antrim that now lives in Glenarm Castle with his wife Aurora and his 2 kids, are the Earls of Antrim. The Earls of Antrim. McQuillans were the chiefs. The McQuillans had chiefs. They weren't earls. They were lords of the root. Now I just work in a shop for minimum wage. So I do.